State's win substantiates Notre Dame's woof. You're all chasing the wrong rubric. Your 2019 champion, Bevo. Whoa! Let's go.
Bevo. What are you calling me, Bevo?
Whose idea was that pen that was about a foot high for Bevo?
No point.
Take him away from here.
It's example 2019 why you don't run your yap before you play your game, Georgia. This game, though, is over once Bevo demonstrated his authority bovaniacally over Uga. Ellinger says Texas is back. Combine that result with Ohio State making Urban Meyer's last, even though it was a little tighter at the end, and LSU 40, UCF 32, even though that may have been not as close as the final score, and the rubric you wanted to apply, an overarching transitive property to an intransitive puzzle, a little more difficult. Could Ohio State have given a better game than Notre Dame or Oklahoma? Whether Georgia's wolf means Alabama isn't what you thought they were? If UCF's loss makes college expansion less desirable, it's all out there for you, national panel. Mina Kimes, start us off.
My main takeaway from the results is that a 4-team playoff is clearly enough to determine who the best teams are, because
this year
you've got Bama and Clemson and then a whole bunch of teams that can all beat each other on any given Sunday, right? You talked about the transitive property.
Or Saturday in this case.
Keep going. This team beats this team, this beats. You'll just go in a circle right now, okay, outside of them. Now, if the goal of the playoffs is to have additional entertainment and, more compelling games, sure, but I do think you'd be submitting those players from Bama and Clemson who are going to the NFL to unnecessary risk of injury for a playoff that's ultimately going to lead to the same place anyways.
Woody Page, your view of that?
Well, I think, Mina, you should take a look at the NCAA Final Four in basketball and just put them and let them play one weekend and let's don't have a tournament. No. Tony and I have talked about this over and over again. In every other division of football, they have a genuine playoff. You go to 8 teams, and the top 4 teams get an advantage because they play the first round at home. We get to continue the season. We don't have to wait for a month before the next row of games are being played. I think that this proves more than ever before that you need a playoff because we see upsets happening in basketball, other sports, and we did get the final.
I appreciate that, Woody Page. I don't want to dredge up the same argument. I want to view it from last night. Can you do that, Woody? Can you look at what you saw from Georgia last night? Can you look at what you saw from...
Georgia didn't want to play. The Bulldogs weren't interested in playing after what happened. Texas proved that they are on the way to the top. UCF is still in a great position to prove that they belong in the conversation, but they need to play a better schedule. Who else do you want me to talk about?
No, that's fine. I was thinking about muting you for saying in the conversation. I'll give you a reprieve because we're early in the new year. Israel Gutierrez, how about you?
Yeah, it's 2019. I'm not ready to rehash the old stuff about the playoffs. What I will say is now it's becoming more and more difficult to really judge these teams in these bowl scenarios anyway, because not only do you have the motivation like Woody was talking about with Georgia or whomever the team is, right? But you also have injuries in play. You also have just guys that are sitting out. And so how do you assess that LSU-UCF game with Mackenzie Milton out and with LSU's, NFL-bound players, a handful of them sitting out? I don't know. I do know that you could say, hey, UCF has got itself a nice program there, and they've vaulted themselves into this normal sort of top 15 conversation if Heupel and them can keep this going, and then set up the way Scott Frost set them up. But in terms of everything else, I just don't know if you can really assess much of anything in these bowl games now.
I gave Woody the reprieve. You're not getting the reprieve, Israel, for saying in the conversation. You've been warned. Clinton Yates, how about you?
What you get is a situation where you make it clear to everybody, obviously we need 8 teams because it would just be more fun for all of us involved. More upsets would mean a better tournament. And if you had a situation in which a Georgia, for example, could keep playing, they might be a little bit more motivated to actually play in what would be those early round tournament games. So you solve yourself that problem of teams having to wait a month to play a bowl game that's otherwise pointless. That messes up the teams who you actually want to watch. That's what's so annoying about this. You disincentivize the actual good teams beyond.
So you're
the
in it, Clinton, for entertainment. You want the most entertaining games. You want the most number of entertainment games possible, and you think there's, of course, space for that. Mina, let me ask you this. Specifically, Georgia, getting trounced like they did. They wanted in the 4. They played like a number that was half that, let's say. What did it mean to you?
It means what I said, which is after Bama and Clemson, you could put any of those teams in the four. Tony, none of them over the course of these last few days have distinguished themselves. And while, yes, having this playoff would be more entertaining, do we really want to make those Bama and Clemson players play more games
Everything
with
you
a
say
greater
is true.
likelihood of getting injured, even though
But
they're
I'm trying
going
to get
end
to
up
this
being
point.
in the same place?
I'm trying to get to this point, Mina. Georgia knew their season meant nothing. It wasn't going to go anywhere else. And as Woody said, and as Clinton said, they didn't even roll out the ball, let's say, yesterday. That is intrinsically a problem. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and for those guys, a lot of them are still auditioning for the NFL, right? Not just next year, but in years beyond. So you would have think they would have been incentivized to try, and it was a complete failure on the part of the program.
To me, it's a different conversation. This was the old bowl game conversations where you say, oh, this conference is better than this conference because of bowl results. Well, you can't really do that. Georgia was a great matchup for Alabama, but Georgia also lost by, 20 points to LSU there. So Georgia wasn't necessarily this great team. We put them up there because they did well against Alabama. Now we see them against Texas with obviously less motivation, but you can't use that as the full excuse. So maybe Georgia, we just sort of thought they were better than they were because of the way they played Bama.
Israel, you touched upon it just briefly, that if you have 8 teams, you have all the players, star players on those 8 teams are staying around because they get to play more games and they want to play meaningful games. Nobody from Georgia that's going to be drafted. You're now going to have 3rd and 4th and 5th round picks are going to say, I'm not playing in the postseason. That's going to mess up my chance to be in the NFL.
I'm not here for this argument the game means nothing, so we're not going to play. Okay, you're not in the mood. You get in the mood. This is your big chance to play in a bowl game. I'm serious about this. But Clinton Yates, you thought Georgia belonged in the top 4. You made that argument before the game.
I think they belonged. I think they belonged to the top 4. I think they were understandably non-motivated, and I think that as a Georgia fan, you can still be upset. All of these things can be true, and that is the issue with the bowl system as constituted right now.
A word on LSU and UCF. Final score was 40-32. I said it wasn't that close, meaning you made a face. You thought maybe I was overstating that, so I'll let you address that part of it. The streak is dead. Long live the streak. An incredible run for this program. Last year, UCF won this game, made up a championship. Either you were all for it or all against it. This year they lose. Time of possession, total yards. That's what I was talking about, meaning LSU dominated that one.
Yeah.
Is this a step back for playoff expansion, Kimes?
No, this game doesn't really tell me anything. Look, they're getting UCF is getting trolled today, and they deserve it. They've been trolling the rest of college football for 2 years. But to argue that this game, in which their backup quarterback was playing, threw for less than 100 yards, suddenly means something about the program, I think is ridiculous, even if LSU was missing a handful of defensive starters.
I just think that what has happened with UCF is a scenario in which their reputation got out in front of them, and the actual team and the actual program, that story got lost, which is really unfortunate to me. I mean, I think they've proven that they can play with a lot of teams in the country, but as far as how they've looked, they look like the bad guys when really the kids on that team are just trying to play as well as they can and have done well in this scenario. I'm proud of UCF. I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about.
Gutierrez?
Yeah, when you've had these arguments for 2 years now, when you're starting beefs with Florida and you're having back and forth online, I love what they're doing here. They're creating, again, their program. Whether or not they're satisfied by these 2 seasons and the final result, hopefully for them, 5-10 years from now, they're going to have these conversations a lot more often, and we'll say, okay, you are now officially part of the equation. Not
is having conversations being in the conversation? That's a question maybe some of the viewers who are scoring at home are going to do that for you, Israel. Woody Page.
Well, having conversations, a team that nobody had ever heard of 3 years ago, now in Florida is in the conversation with Florida State, Miami, for a state where they have so many recruits there. They're going to get their share even more so now. Think about the Rose Bowl. If you'd had either one of those starting quarterbacks not in that game, you'd wondered about it. They didn't have a guy. I looked up at the stats in the third quarter. Their backup was 11 for 33. Yeah. There was no way they could compete.
Yeah, but just on the face of it, watching the game play out, see how LSU controlled the line of scrimmage and time of possession and how UCF was playing from behind, Clinton, do you think they were exposed in any way?
No, the difference between big conference teams and other teams is the line of scrimmage. It's the size of the guys in the trenches. That's the biggest difference in all of these situations, so it does not surprise me at all.
All right. One more question we'll ask from this whole college football weekend. We've been off the last couple of days. Of course, we didn't get to address Alabama and Clemson, which is now Alabama-Clemson 4. And this, is it good for football? Is it not good for football? Conversation you people want to have. I'm going to go on the record right here and say I'm all for 4s, Rocky 4, my favorite. Woody Page, are you okay with Alabama Clemson 4 being good for college football?
I've been doing this for 50 years. I am looking so forward to this game. So, yes, I think it's great for college football when you have rivalries that are like the Red Sox and the Yankees or the old Steelers and Cowboys when they would play. I just think it's great. Remember this, that the other 3 times they played, the team that was not ranked number 1 won the game. And whoever finishes this will be 15-0, and that hasn't happened since 1897, the first year I covered sports.
Israel Gutierrez.
Yeah, I don't really think it feels like it's just too much or the two teams, because obviously there's turnover and everything else. We didn't have these 2 quarterbacks 3 years ago, 4 years ago, right? And so I just think for the sake of college football, there needs to be a good game here, because if we're saying these 2 were the best and the elite teams and everybody else was separate, well, give us the big finish and that'll be satisfying. That'll be good for college football. Otherwise, it'll just...
I don't know. You say give us a good finish, and I'd be like, well, what about last year that went to overtime? What about the Deshaun Watson game? These 2 teams are like, what more do you want, Gutierrez?
For this season, though, for this
yes,
season.
of course. Clinton Yates.
Yeah, but last year it was Georgia, Tony. But secondarily, what the deal was is that, look, there's not that great of a storyline with this situation. That's what my concern is. I don't care about Alabama dominating. That's not really that big of a deal. But there's nothing specifically as interesting to me as a non-Bama or a non-Clemson fan that's going to draw me to this. There's just a backup quarterback situation. That's, decent storyline.
Over the last 4 years, Bama and Clemson are combined 106-4 against teams not named Bama and Clemson. That is not good for pairing, but it makes for an excellent championship game because it has everything you want, the best players, the best coaches. It is the optimal rematch,
Good.
I think, and I think it's going to be excellent.
Sounds like you're thrilled. And I'm thrilled that you're thrilled, Mina Kimes. All right, I mean, that's the point, Israel Gutierrez. 2 of the last 3 championship games have been all-time games. Wouldn't you agree? But you want more. You want it again. All right.
Do it again.
We are going to do it again when we come back from break here. These are the scores today. But since it's the first show of the new year, one last look back at last year's scoring. The 2018 leaders. Yeah. Anyone know who was atop the rankings? Woody Page.
on the medal stand.
Clinton
Look
Yates.
who's on the medal stand.
I don't see Mina Kimes or Israel Gutierrez on there.
It's a volume stat.
You got to
check the wins.
Show me the efficiency.
It's only because Woody has surgically adhesed himself to the seat. That's why. Virus up next.
80%.
Around the Horn is brought to you by One A Day Men.
Healthy you.
The Horn brought to you by Chase. Coming to you from the Seaport District at Pier 17.
Mina Kimes 13, Woody Page 11, Israel Gutierrez, and Clinton Yates 10. It's buy or sell. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. New year, same story. Dysfunction. Here's Mike Tomlin today.
I wasn't able to communicate with him on Friday evening or Saturday morning. So when we had our Saturday morning mock game or walkthrough and he was unavailable and we hadn't communicated with him, then it became something altogether different.
Something altogether. Asked if Antonio Brown quit on the team, Mike Tomlin said you can call it what you want to call it. Mina Kimes, what do you want to call it?
I call it a mess. This is the messiest team in the NFL, which is saying a lot for a league that has Washington, okay?
Don't
There
get
are
me
so
started.
many problems to list. First of all, Antonio Brown, obviously the behavior is unacceptable, but it's been going on for a while. Ben Roethlisberger calling out his teammates publicly. That's not normal quarterback behavior. Le'Veon Bell, front office mismanaged that. Mike Tomlin clearly can't keep it all under control.
All right, I'm really looking forward to the 30 for 30 you're going to be doing on this, Mina Kimes. But simply, are the Steelers going to have to trade Antonio Brown?
I sure hope not. Because of the way the contract is structured, the amount of dead money that would hit their cap would put them in a lot of trouble and really jeopardize Ben's window in terms of competitiveness.
Woody Page.
I'm buying that he quit on the team, and as Mina talked about, $21.1 million if they trade him or release him, dead cap money. This is a team in turmoil. It has been since the beginning during the offseason with Bell, and it's gone on all season long. Once proud franchise is at the bottom of the league now in terms of the way it deals with its people.
Israel Gutierrez.
I mean, you can say he quit on his team, but you could argue he has 15 touchdowns. It's not even an argument. We're a Pittsburgh Steelers record, and he did his part. If he's angry with the head coach and the quarterback being too aligned or what have you, then I'm fine with that because, look, he's producing for you. The problem if you're the Pittsburgh is what do you do now? Who do you hitch your wagon to? You've got Le'Veon Bell tweeting, where are we going next together, big bro? Like, this is a mess, and you have to figure out whether you want to hitch your wagon to Ben Roethlisberger, the older quarterback, Antonio Brown, who's 30 and might not be in his prime for much longer, or a running back who you already have to mend fences with.
Or the coach of the team, Mike Tomlin today. Clinton Yates, what did you hear from him?
I heard a guy who's lost control of his program. Dudes are going on IG Live to talk about you behind your back. That's an issue, but that's why overall I blame this on the GM. You knew what you were dealing with from a roster standpoint. There's some people that believe that Ben is actually the one that has to go in this scenario, and they've got to figure that out because you can't get rid of AB. He's the best player on the team, but the money is so messed up. That's on the GM. Now, all the cards have shaken out at the wrong time for this team. Never mind.
Dudes going on IG Live to talk about you behind your back. Not an issue the Rooney family is familiar with. Not something they were dealing with Chuck Noll, right? We'll move on. Buy or sell two, James Harden. 4 straight games of 40 points and 40 per over his last 10 games. Also living at the free throw line. Had 27 free throws Monday night. You could say he's the best in the league at getting to the line, the best in the league at getting you to foul him. You could also say, where was the foul on that? Woody, what are you buying out of Harden's run, out of the Rockets' run, and out of that foul call right there, too?
And he's the best in the league at never being called for traveling, even though he does. But I looked 3 weeks ago, and they were in 14th place, and I went, put them aside. So D'Antoni and Harden, I think, got together and said, you just got to take over the game after the issues we've had, and he's done it. He's on the best run since Jordan in 1986, and prior to that, Logan in 1976. He's having a great
Logan in 1976. I need to know more about this. Oh, the Logan run. Okay, all right. I walked right into that. Yeah, I would have said Kobe also in the last 15 years. Gutierrez, how about you? Good point.
In terms of the Rockets, they will be fine now. That's what this is telling you. If they put the ball in James Harden's hands, don't worry. By the end of the season, they'll have a 1-4 seed. But in terms of what James Harden is doing, man, this guy's the best scorer in the league that features Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. It's probably not even close. It doesn't matter how he does it, whether he gets to the line with phantom fouls. He's manipulated the game enough to be an unstoppable scorer, which is crazy if you think about it, because everybody throws Dwayne Wade in as like the third, maybe Jerry West, the third best shooting guard in history. Well, James Harden has already won an MVP, something Dwayne didn't do, and he might win a second one. So he's probably there.
You admitted phantom fouls there, but you say that's part of the game, Israel.
I mean, it is. It is. If that's your game,
Yates?
part of the game.
How about you?
Yeah, but I mean, look, this is an arugulous team that I believed in because they were doing this last year. This shouldn't surprise anybody. They messed everything up, and it was unfortunate when they lost 2 players, but they tossed Carmelo into that mix, which is an absolute disaster, which I warned against. That's done, and now they're getting back to who we thought that they were. Listen, he's done a fair amount of it without Chris Paul, but let's not act like the Rockets dominating is something new here. It's what happened all last season until Paul got hurt.
I'm buying that he's putting the team on his back. His usage rate is currently the 3rd highest in NBA history behind Kobe and Westbrook's MVP season. Now look at that MVP season. You'll see James Harden is currently averaging more points per game, better shooting rate, and more 3-point attempts than Westbrook did. He absolutely should be considered to repeat as MVP.
These stats from Mina Kimes is going to put her over the top right there. Woo. I don't know, though, Woody. I know you said Jordan. I would have gone with Logan's run. I would have gone with Kobe's run from 15 years ago. I think we missed that one. Yates.
No.
What? Kobe had the 50-point game run. I mean, a 50-point run is better than a 40-point run. That's what I'm saying. Doesn't matter. You made the showdown. Chill out. Mina Kimes and Woody Page. Showdown next.
Brought to you by Tostitos, for every kind of fan.
Mina Kimes, Woody Page, how we start the year in Showdown. Look at Woody Page's tie, by the way. Is that Grover on your tie? He's had a busy recent couple of days. Showdown 1, we're so excited. Lincoln Riley out for all NFL coaching searches. It appears Oklahoma locking their man down. So it's 8 open jobs in the NFL and all possibilities who can be on board. Here's the thing about those teams. They weren't so good this year. That's why they fired their coach. But who's got the best opportunity, Mina?
Cleveland. Absolutely Cleveland. What we've learned from these firings, you don't want to take a job where there's not already a quarterback. Now, the Packers have one, but the rest of their roster is much weaker than Cleveland's, in my opinion. I'd go with the Browns.
Mina, the problem is, you're wrong about this. It is Green Bay. You got a Hall of Famer wearing a uniform. He's going to be there for another 5 years. They got $50 million or so in salary cap money. I want him for my next 5
$50 million in the cushions of the couch. It sounds like Woody Page's house. We'll move on. Showdown 2, Uga versus Bevo again. Let's look at this one again. How close a photographer with the long lenses to being gored. Bevo's handler throughout it all. Some of the other people just inches away from horns and laughing it off. Woody, who do you blame for this dust-up?
Texas, Mike the Tiger is in a cage. Ralphie the Buffalo is in a truck. Why are you putting him behind that little barrier? I blame around the Longhorns.
Yeah. I blame whoever built I'm sorry. I blame whoever built
Woody got you to laugh. That's how this is going to end. That's all it needed. Woody Page starts 2019 with a win.
We're going from Mina to Mean Gene. We lost the greatest historic broadcaster of wrestling of all time today, Mean Gene Okerlund. He was raised in North Dakota. He's a graduate of the University of Nebraska. He was a disc jockey who filled in for a wrestling part-time guy, and he has been the best of all time. His interviews with Randy Macho Man Savage were the best of all time. He and Tommy Tart were fantastic.
Absolutely right. Thank you for
Yeah.
that tribute, Woody Page. We'll miss you, Mean Gene.